Welcome to Conversations with Alya Lei. Tune in for inspiration, information, and upliftment as creatives and entrepreneurs share their journeys, challenges, and successes.
So on today's episode of Did You Know with Alya Lei, we have our wonderful guest, Aidan Park, and we're going to talk about his Yay Foundation, how it got started, what it's about, and who it's for. But first, real quick, Aidan Park, also known as the Yay Guy, is the founder and CEO of the Yay Foundation. He is an award-winning stand-up comedian and best-selling author of The Art of Being Yay, the OMG NSFW Memoir and Guide to Authentic Joy, featuring a foreword by Margaret Cho. Aidan utilizes comedy and personal storytelling to spread yay, promoting mental and emotional health through funny and engaging educational wellness programs. Additionally, he teaches comedy as a tool for self-expression and connection while producing comedy events to unite the community. As a comedian, Aidan has 2 comedy specials available on NBC's Peacock and Amazon Prime. His comedy has been featured on NBC, Amazon Prime, PBS, CBS, the TV Guide channel, Hulu, and Comedy Central. So thank you, Aidan, for being a guest here today.
Hey, thank you. Yahoo.
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 Okay, so Aidan, do you want to start with telling us what got you to create the Yay Foundation?
Oh, okay. Hi. What got me to create the Yay Foundation? It was a necessity. What happened was, I had a pretty rough childhood from the beginning. I was born to a single mom. I was undocumented, brought here, raised in government housing with my grandma, and by the time I was 19, I was homeless and I was HIV positive, right? And so don't worry, you can't get it from jokes, okay, or from podcast frequencies or what have you, or whatever you're watching, or YouTube channels. I like to make jokes about difficult things, so that'll happen a lot during this. And so at that time, I picked up, there was a mentor who stepped in and said, hey, I'm going to help you. I'm going to help you, find footing in your life. And he did. But the methodology that was used was very pull yourself up by your bootstraps, work hard, get it together, and push forward. And that worked to a degree until I lost my partner, Michael. And when that happened, nothing worked. So I could not push through. I could not work my way out of it. I could not arm wrestle my way out. There was nothing I could do. And I always had this position against my negative emotions, like your negative emotions are not serving you, and therefore you should not be having negative emotions, was kind of my attitude against my own emotions, which caused me to have extreme panic attacks and suicidal ideation. It really hit a rock bottom for me. So it was at that point I was like, all right, I have to figure out how to be happy. I have to figure out, if I'm going to continue to be alive, I have to figure out how I'm going to be in this world and not be miserable. So that's what I decided to commit my life to. That became a book called The Art of Being Yay. And surprisingly, I didn't know people still read, but people read. And so people read the book and they asked me to make speeches, and that became, a developing of my foundation, where I help people tell their story through the art of stand-up comedy, and all with the focus about mental health and embracing your emotions and working with your emotions rather than muscling through, which is often the strategy among certain groups. So, and which actually worked for me until a point, and it did not work. So right. That was a lot. So that's how the Yay Foundation got started.
That was a lot, but that was great. That was a great synopsis. When you say muscling through, can you clarify what you mean by that when you say muscling through?
Yes.
why it worked before, what it meant, and then why it didn't work.
Okay, so when I at the point at which I found this empowerment life, I was quite like a person on a river faced up, up, and rocks just
So,
kept hitting me. Like
so you were rowing upstream
I
and you
was
were bumping
rowing,
into rocks.
right, and I didn't see the rock coming, and I just thought life just happened. I just thought life just happened to you.
Mm-hmm.
And you have no really bearing or control over anything. I just thought that's just how life was.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was taught, oh, actually, you can be responsible for your life, for the outcomes of your life, right? You can actually take control of your narrative, and you can reframe your story, and get out of the victim mentality. So I would say it did help me get out of the victim mentality. But the way it went about it was kind of like, I was a musical theater actor as an Asian person. So it was either Miss Saigon or I would, that was it, right? And I remember I would go on auditions and I would not get picked. And I would I had this one incident where I auditioned for Danny Zuko in Greece when I was 19, and I got a call back, and it was me and this one other guy who could not sing it. He just could not sing it.
Yeah.
Could not dance it. And I was like, I wonder what they're gonna do. And they went with him. He looked more the part, traditionally, And I remember
You would
feeling
make a
like,
great Danny Zuko. I totally see that.
well, nowadays I think with the, Asian movement, maybe they would be more open to it, but at the time they were they went very and so I remember going to those groups and I would say like, oh, I feel like my being Asian is a disadvantage. And I remember them saying, nobody cares about your story.
Ouch.
Yeah. Nobody cares about your story. No one cares about your story, about your racket. You want to be an actor? You're Asian? Tough. Figure it out. You got to figure it out. It doesn't matter. You got to figure it out. You're not getting the results you want. You own the results. Take your power back. Get the results. Don't blame society. Take your power back.
Yeah.
And then sometimes I'd go in there and be like, oh, I'm sad because X, Y, and Z happens. Like, that's your doing. You created it. And even if you didn't create it, it's now your responsibility. So you handle it. How are you going to handle it? Do you want to live the rest of your life as a sad HIV positive person? You can do that if you want, or you can take charge of your life and you can move forward. Now, at the time, it was, this is like from the world of Tony Robbins kind of thing, okay? Right. Which he's great in some areas. So it was successful because in a way, I took that on. I was like, and I had no parenting before this. I didn't even know to say thank you to people. Like, I remember I got a ride from somebody when I was in junior and high school, and someone gave me a ride home, and I did not say thank you. I just no one really taught me thank yous, please, anything, really. So I was like this jungle boy, and I really took that on. I was like, all right, I want to be a successful actor. I want to be, whatever I wanted. And so I would work harder than everybody. And it created some results. But also the position there was, if you have negative emotions, it's not serving you. So I would do things like the swish pattern. So swish pattern is like, all right, so I study neurolinguistic programming, which is a mental tool that they sometimes use it in cults. But so I don't know if you remember the Nexium thing. The Nexium. Okay, so anyway, gotta look that up. Very interesting. So there are hypnotic language patterns that you can use to kind of get past the conscious mind. So the idea is that your conscious mind is the gatekeeper
Mm-hmm.
your real beliefs, which lives in the unconscious mind. So I might say something to you like, I bet you already know that you're beautiful, aren't you?
Mm.
So you hear that, it's kind of, so that moment right there, what did he just say? That
Uh-huh.
confusion
Yeah.
actually busies up the conscious mind,
Uh-huh.
and lets you get behind and plants information. So I bet you already know that is a presupposition, right? I bet
Yeah.
you already know that you're beautiful, aren't you? The wrong phrasing right there
Uh-huh.
confuses the mind. It's
Uh-huh.
not something that we're used to. But I just basically said you're beautiful. That's what I said.
Yeah.
I bet you already know that you are beautiful, aren't you? I just said you're beautiful. Gets past the conscious mind. So they would teach me tools like that.
Hmm.
So I would start, I walked around saying things to myself like, double negatives is another hypnotic language pattern. I bet you don't know that you're awesome, right? Isn't it? So I
So,
wanted to implant ideas in my head.
right. It sounds like that's a good thing if you want to implant ideas that are serving you into your subconscious that maybe wasn't
Potentially.
there, right?
Yeah,
So
I don't
like you're
know.
awesome, you're beautiful. Yeah, those are good beliefs to have.
It worked to a degree.
Yeah, yeah.
And the swish pattern is basically the idea like, all right, so if you close your eyes, like every emotion has like a picture scenario. So if I think about a sad moment, I can picture it in my head, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I see it like, I don't know, let's say an ocean. Oh, I see an ocean and I see a sad girl standing on the edge of the pier. Okay. And what they would say is, okay, so if you don't want to feel that, you want to make the picture darker, turn down the
Mm,
color, make it black and white, put the
right.
picture far away from you, make it super small, and then imagine tossing it behind you and nailing it behind you and saying that you are done with feeling like that again. So
Mm-hmm.
every time you feel sad, you either or you unmotivated or upset or anything like that, you
Right.
would do these kinds of patterns. So I would either speak to myself in hypnotic language patterns, or I would do the swish method, or but all of those things are actually the issue with those things was that all of them are a response to get away from my emotions,
Mm, mm.
which works to a degree.
Right.
But later on, it really blew up in my face.
Okay.
And I think,
Explain if you want
did,
to.
did you know anything of this about me? This is interesting. I don't think I talked to you, right? About this, any of
I
this.
a little, but not to this degree. No.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we're learning something new. Okay,
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
So it got me a business success. Teaches you to have gumption. So I actually went to
Yeah.
the bubble guy. I was like, hey, you should expand your business.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
I knew how to
So
run things.
yeah.
And I was basically, as a 19-year-old young man, surrounded by, at the time, nobody was into empowerment in early 2000s, really. So I was surrounded by like 40 something, 50 something white men who come in and they're like, I lost $100,000 in this deal. And I'm like, I did not get this, you know, gold
Audition. Yeah.
degree
Yeah.
in a community theater.
Right.
And same thing went to them. Like, no one cares. What are your results? What's driving your results? Like, it doesn't matter. You
Wow.
know, very
Wow.
masculine energy.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, okay, so it got me to a certain level of success. I got the Laugh Factory. I ran a show there for 5 years. It made me super productive. I was very, very good at people would be like, how are you able to manage all these things? You do a lot.
Right.
It's the NLP training. So it was really helpful. But then as it relates to dealing with traumatic emotions, I found that it was very detrimental. When Michael
Mm.
died,
Yeah.
and I was so absolutely in love with him. And I'm working on my next book. there's more layers of grief under layers of grief, right? And you know, I suppressed all of it, but actually deep down, I did not like that I was Asian. I did not like that I was gay. And I felt handicapped in this world as a result. But I went with no one cares about your story. And I doubled down on all these techniques and tools. But what happened, why Michael was so special was he was the first man that was like, oh, you have HIV, right? Oh, me too. So I actually like that you do so that we can be more comfortable. You are Asian. I really like Asian guys. So I really like that. You've got this crazy energy. I love that about you. I love that you're gay. It serves me. So there's everything that I really did not like about me. Here was somebody who could sit down and really appreciate me for all those things that I thought was such a handicap and such a something to be ashamed of and to have to be managed.
Yeah.
And when he died, that also died, right? So the ability to be able to love myself for all those things that I thought was a curse.
Right.
You know?
Right. Right.
So it triggered all kinds of things when he passed away. If we're, I don't know how intense we want to get on that. I mean, is this like, how intense is this podcast?
This is an authentic podcast. It is what it is. So,
Okay.
yeah.
So I was molested when I was 5 years old. And when I was molested when I was 5 years old, I remember my biggest fear was not the perpetrator or anything. I thought it was my fault. And I grew up in a very conservative Baptist household where everybody thought they were going to get raptured. So I remember every good moment that I had after that with my mom, with my grandma. I remember thinking as a kid, this could be the last time I'm ever going to have a moment with my mom again. Because any moment the rapture would happen, and I was already gay, so I was going to go to hell regardless. I couldn't tell them. But as a 5, 6, 7-year-old, feeling like everything you love can be taken away at that moment, any moment,
Yeah.
was deeply down there. I have abandonment issues as a result. So
Yeah.
when Michael died, all of that came up, right?
Oh my God. Yeah.
And when Michael died, I just felt like I was left. That feeling of I was left behind. I was left behind, right?
Right.
And so all of those things and the self-hatred. And then at that state, then I tried applying the tools.
Sure.
Reframing is just kind of like giving a new narrative. So like one could say, oh, Michael's dead and I'm sad. Oh, but but isn't it wonderful to be able to get a fresh new start in your life? This is a brand new chapter, Aidan. You can step into it. As to avoid the feelings that you're feeling, only just puts a blanket over a pile of crap. Or doing hypnotic language patterns. I bet you already know that you aren't, you're gonna be wonderful, have a wonderful life with or without Michael, isn't it? Is that gonna work?
Yeah.
No one cares about my story. Let me just keep it.
Wow.
No one wants to hear you suffering, Aidan. Nobody wants to hear programming.
Right.
Nobody wants to hear you suffering. Work harder, switch pattern. I don't know.
Wow.
Oh, you sad? Think about Michael. Turn down the picture of him and throw it behind you. And it's to be behind you. Move on. And it did not work.
Right.
I started getting panic attacks because now what was happening was I was having these intense emotions, and then I was having a reaction to those emotions. So now I'm dealing with two things. Like I'm in resistance to the emotions that I'm having.
Right.
So then I started.
Right. Yeah.
It wasn't even the emotions itself. It was the reaction to the emotion. Like I should not be feeling this way. I should not be in this position.
Right.
I am wrong for feeling this way. And if I were a better student at an NLP, if I were doing this correctly, then I should be able to move on with my life. And I'm not able to.
Mm.
What's
Mm.
wrong with me?
Yeah.
And that was hell.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
So
So
then,
I'm sorry, that was a lot. You look so sad. You're like, aren't you promised a happy ending because I'm here talking to you about it now?
yeah, so there's going to be a happy ending.
I wonder, I mean, not
I
that
don't
kind.
know.
With two Asians on one podcast, they might get the wrong idea. We do bubbles, we don't do salons. We're
Or
not therapists.
massages. Oh my gosh, I didn't even know that. Like, as this is an aside, when I was a teenager, I didn't know what I wanted to do. And I was like, and I thought massaging would be a good job. And so I told my mom, if I can't figure it out, I'll be a masseuse. She got so mad at me. She like pointed at me. She's like, oh, then you might as well be a prostitute. And I was like, what the F was she talking about? Because I had no idea at the time that sometimes a masseuse could be literally like a prostitute, And I was like, huh?
That masseuse, maybe a massage therapist. Does that sound better?
Probably. But, at the time it wouldn't have mattered, in high school and. But back to you. Okay, so NLP, swishing, hypnotic programming language. It was actually not even not helping and not working. It actually compounded everything and made it so much worse.
At that moment, yes. So
at that moment. At that moment. Yeah. Up until then, it was working.
Helpful,
yes.
And then it's not, right?
Right. So then what happened? Like, how did you get out of it? You went to tools to help you cope.
Mm-hmm.
And those tools were not working anymore.
Yeah.
What happened next?
Drugs.
We laugh, but also,
But yeah.
Self-medicating. Yeah. Self-medicating.
I just couldn't take it. And you know how we say a tool that once worked no longer works, right?
Yes.
And you move on. You know what? The drugs actually at that time it saved my life because I really I could not. I could not.
You couldn't deal. Yeah.
Imagine living in this world without Michael. I could not,
Yeah.
I would wake up every day and pray for death. Like it was like, I could not. And so, of course, I tried to get a man to shove into that place, as quickly as possible. And when you are in a really vulnerable state and you open yourself up to a relationship, you are ripe for people who see you as an easy target for whatever they want. So I met a guy who was I've never been gaslit before. I did not know what that is. I had no idea. We would meet and he would do things like really intensely check out other people in front of me. And I would go, "What are you doing?"
Yeah.
And he would go, "What? I wasn't doing anything. I don't know what your problem is."
Oh.
And then I started questioning my reality. I was like,
no.
Did I? Should I? Am I? What's really going on? What am I seeing? What am I hearing? Right?
Yeah.
I had an incident where, oh gosh, this is getting deep. This is interesting. We went to Vegas together. And they were there, and I was there with the girlfriend. He's bisexual. I was there with the girlfriend. He met my girlfriend. And that girlfriend has been known to sleep with other guys' boyfriends.
Oh, okay.
I was on stage and I performed, and I came back into the theater and I looked for them, and they were nowhere to be found. It was a small room, but I left and I came back in like 30 minutes and they were sitting right there. And I was like, where were they? And at the time I was like, oh, I must have missed it. It's a dark room, but how could I have possibly missed them?
Right.
And eventually I thought, it was to that degree, like, did
Right.
something happen between the two of them? You know,
Yeah. Yeah.
so I've never had that kind of mind mess up. And then,
Yeah.
of course, I have that feeling, and then I'm like, well, you shouldn't be feeling this way because
Oof.
your suspicions is the problem here, which
Which
is just what
is
they would like you to believe. And so I was
right.
switch pattern on my belief systems and being suspicious while this is actually happening in front of me. So it was like a tale, you know.
Oh
So
my
I hit
gosh.
rock bottom. I was supposed to go to Italy with him. He
Okay.
bought me a plane ticket to Italy, and we're gonna go on a 10-day vacation. And the day before, I I I got a piece of information that it didn't confirm what I thought, but it actually it made more sense. You know,
Mm.
I did not know that I mean, I knew that this person, my friend, was, you know, out there, you know, but I did not know that she had a tendency to do this with.
Mm.
And so, in passing conversation with another mutual friend, she actually told me what had happened. And I just got this feeling like I was like, they weren't in the room. They weren't in the room. I knew
Mm.
they weren't in the room. I checked. So,
Right.
but even then, you're walking away feeling like, what did I feel, right?
Right.
So at that time, I was like, all right, that was my rock bottom. And I said, I'm so unhappy and nothing's working. I have to figure out how to be happy if I'm going to continue to be alive because I'm not living like this. I don't
Yeah.
know what that means, but I just got to figure out how I can be happy again. What do I do?
Yeah.
And I figured out that happiness is actually an emotional experience. And
Mm-hmm.
I quantified it by saying, all right, like happiness means you spend more time in the positive emotional states rather than the negative. So we
Mm.
want to balance that out. That's just kind of how I quantified it
Mm-hmm.
at the time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so my focus became, well, how do I foster these positive emotions and what are positive emotions even? So I started
Mm.
really identifying what they were, like comfort, safety, security, um,
Mm-hmm.
uh, pleased, proud, excited,
Mm-hmm.
there's all these flavors of positive emotions, and then
Yeah.
there's flavors of negative emotion.
Sure.
So I found that, okay, if everything is about emotions at the end of the day, and I heard this great quote that at the end of the day, everything's about emotion. Everything you want is because there's an emotional experience at the other end of it. Like, you might
Mm.
want money because you want a sense of freedom and security. You might want a boyfriend so you can feel safe and protected or something.
Mm-hmm.
You might want, to meditate because you get that peace and calm. So every experience has an emotion attached at the end of it. Otherwise, it's meaningless.
Interesting. Yeah.
So I was like, okay. And when I thought about Michael, when I would cry, think about Michael, I was like, if that is true,
Mm-hmm.
if Michael were here right now, what emotions would I be experiencing? So I
Mm.
said, okay, I would be experiencing safety, comfort, and approval, maybe. So,
Mm.
approval can lead to acceptance or something like that. Let's say.
Sure. Yeah.
So then I would say, okay, well, Michael's dead, and I cremated him, so I can't bring him back through Pet Cemetery. So what am I gonna do? And so I said, okay, then I guess I need to start figuring out how to foster those emotional states in myself.
Mm.
What do I say to myself to get that?
Mm.
What do I, you know, what do I need to do?
Right.
And so I started deliberately going after emotional tones,
Mm.
and I found that there were negative emotion, the traumas that were causing a lot of pain for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I studied negative emotions and how what do I need to do to handle this? Because shoving them down, pushing them away, swishing them out, talking myself into a pattern didn't work. What do I
Right.
do with it?
Right.
And I found this process of inner child work and actually validating your feelings as a tool to really integrate all of that energy back. So when
Mm.
you have a little child who it's from the theory of like when you are injured when you're like 3 years old,
Mm-hmm.
you get a trauma and the 3 year old will dissociate
Hmm.
and not because they don't want to feel that painful experience and they feel powerless to change it.
Right.
But that dissociation and that negative emotional state actually gets buried into your subconscious
Hmm.
and you carry that with you. And
Hmm.
so when you live through the day and someone triggers you and you have a big response, that is an indicator that there is an unresolved trauma. And
Mm.
so I was like, okay, when you have an infection on your arm, let's say,
Mm-hmm.
for example, like, so if you got a cut on your arm, if you don't have a cut on your arm and you bang a table, it hurts, but it goes down, right?
Right.
Normal.
Yeah.
If you have an infection there and you bang your hand on the table, you will scream. That
Right.
is equivalent to unhealed emotional trauma. And
Mm.
the way to heal it is to actually go back and re-experience those emotional experiences so
Mm.
that it can be completed and it'll heal over. So that the next time you bang your hand on the table, there is
Uh-huh.
not that reaction because you've reintegrated that aspect of you that is dissociated.
So
So
So it's because you disassociated that it's stuck in your body and your emotions. So when you're saying that the idea is if you relive it and actually feel those emotions in it, then it becomes healed and integrated. So it's no longer a festering wound, but just a healed wound, kind of.
that I can't purport to say I know everything. I just can tell you what worked for me.
Right, right,
I know I'm
right.
a lot
I
better than
just,
I used to be.
yes.
So,
Yeah. So that's
so
what you started to do.
that's what I started to do,
Okay.
and I'll give you an example that's like not as so intense. So I had a lot of self-hatred. I had a lot of feelings about myself that I really didn't like, and I really do think that empathy is really important. Like, why would somebody do that? And I remember in middle school, I was a perpetual liar. I would lie about everything. And I was so ashamed about that kid that would just lie about everything. And I walked around the world really hating liars. I was like, anybody who lies is bad. Like,
Mm.
bad liars are evil. But it was a reflection of how I really felt about myself when I was lying in middle school. And
Mm.
so I deep dived into myself as a middle schooler. And I actually, and it was so uncomfortable. I really hated this. The first time I did inner child work, basically you're supposed to go back and meet your past self. And at the end, you get asked to integrate the child, like, oh, they can come with you. And I said no, they need to figure out how to live life in this tough way. That's how life is. I
Mm.
remember that. And the person that was facilitating was like, that's an interesting reaction, which actually
Hmm.
is not comforting at all. I'm not so good at that and right. So
Mm.
I went back to my teenager and I ask, why are you lying? Why are you lying? What's going on? And I had this moment where I saw my kid and I was like, I remember feeling like, man, when I was in Korea, I was 9 years old. I was at the top of my class. I had so many friends. My mother and I were best friends, I thought, and we were so close, and my mother was so proud of me. And then I moved to the United States
When you were
and
9.
when I was 9. And all
Mm-hmm.
of a sudden, I did not know that I was fat, but apparently I was fat. Everybody said I was fat. I can't speak the language. I can't defend myself. I can't make friends. I'm not good
Mm.
at school anymore. I'm no longer making my mother proud. In fact, I'm making her ashamed. And then she moved across the country, right? So again, there's that theme, being left behind, right?
Right. Right.
And so in a way, it doesn't look like, somebody got raptured, but I was in fact left behind. And the mirroring of that event, like the shame that I felt, I thought I did it. I was my fault. If I was more lovable, she would want to stay, but I'm not. So she left.
Right.
And there's nothing I can do about it. So the shame that was running under in the undercurrent was so strong that I opted to lie. I thought I was so unlovable as an individual, as an 11, 12, 13-year-old, that if I could make up some stories about who I really am, then maybe other kids would like me. So I would tell the other kids that I was really wealthy. I would tell the other kids that I was a genius. I would make up whatever lie I could
Right.
to get any kind of interest, because I did not think that I was enough.
Right.
And after that process, I had empathy for myself. Like, I could see why people might lie. I'm not saying it was right.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just saying, you know what? No one was there to teach me. No one parented me. And I was living in extreme fear and shame.
Right.
So I came back.
Right.
And my judgment against people who lie, I don't think it's right to lie. I'm not saying that, but I also think I have empathy for them.
Right.
And it would even be like little things like, oh, someone wants to take an extended holiday and calls in sick or something, and I would just be like, that person is a mother effer, like because I have such resistance to the concept.
Right.
But once I actually came to understand the reasoning behind why I lied,
Yeah.
I could see, oh, they had their reasons why they lied. Another aspect is there's so many different aspects of me that I was trying to get away from. But ultimately it's the looking at it and coming to understand why I did what I did in an empathetic sort of way that caused me to become more sensitive to the world, become more understanding to other people. And that pays dividends, because when you have interactions with people from that position, people really feel understood. People feel understood, and if they feel understood, they want to understand you, and it creates a lot of, and this whole entire process has created so many great friends for me. It got me to understand myself better. I can feel emotions, for the most part. I can stand strong in my truth. I could still be nicer to myself. That's what I'm working on. I'm quite rough. So
Mm.
there's a lot there.
Yeah.
So does that make sense? That's an example
Yes.
of
Yes.
integrate.
Yes. Yes. I feel like what I'm hearing is that not just you, all of us have so many multifaceted parts of ourselves, right? But what I'm hearing overall is that your journey is progress, and that by doing so, you're also seeing and empathizing with others as well, and that it's creating a more fulfilled, happier life now.
Yeah.
Is that?
I mean, life is like, weird, because it's like,
Yeah.
man, I don't want to go through that what I went through with Michael again.
No.
But I do think that I'm probably a better individual as a result of the incident.
Yeah. And so from this now, and is this where you are now? And then how did that, you wrote the book, that was part of the integrating and healing process, the book, your Yay book, right?
Oh,
The Art of Being Yay.
yeah.
And then how did that transition into becoming the Yay Foundation? And how are you helping people with the Yay Foundation?
I'm good at producing events. And
Ah,
what happened was when I wrote the book, I started getting asked to make speeches.
right.
And what I do is I use comedy as a tool for delivery on the speech, right? So I did that.
Mm.
I started doing that. And this is actually a really funny kind of story. During COVID, I lived downtown Los Angeles, and buildings were burning down in downtown Los Angeles, like
Mm.
burning down. And I
Boy.
was like, I got to get out of here.
Yeah.
So I always wanted to visit Montana, and I wasn't sure if the world was going to end. So I hopped in my car and I
Hmm.
said, I'm going to go to Montana and I'm going to teach myself how to ride a bike. So I got up there and I rented a bike. I didn't know how to ride a bike. And
Like a bicycle
yeah,
bike,
a bicycle. I
a
didn't learn how to ride.
bicycle. Okay.
Yeah, I
Okay.
never learned.
Okay.
So
Yeah. Yeah.
I was crashing into things in Montana. I was like, I can't believe I'm here. I ended up in this town where serendipitously I ran into a guy who runs the comedy scene up in Kalispell. And he was a 22-year-old kid, and his dream was to perform at the Laugh Factory. And that was my home
Mm.
club.
Yeah.
And so he was like, I cannot believe you're here. You
Yeah.
just fell out of the sky. This is crazy.
Yeah.
And he was so excited. And little entrepreneur, so amazing.
Aw.
I started mentoring him. He brought me up there to play the Elks Lodge, which is interesting because I'm a Gaysian. During COVID, coming from California, the place was sold out. I got a
Uh-huh.
standing ovation for the show. And I was like, wow, they were so accepting. They really loved the comedy. So
Yeah.
I became really good friends with him. And he said it was really the best weekend of his life. And he said it on Facebook. Sadly, a couple months after that, he took his own life.
Oh
It
no.
was devastating for all of us. He had issues with alcohol, but by then I'd been up there a couple times, so I was friends with his fiance. I was friends with his best friend. I
Mm.
had a whole connection of people up there. And so we got this idea every year we'll do a show in memory of Vince and do a show, right? Every
Mm-hmm.
year. And
Mm-hmm.
we'll
Yeah.
pick an organization to go ahead and give money to.
Oh, okay.
The second year, the people that we picked the money to give the money to were being wishy-washy. Like, we're gonna give you free money, and they were like being wishy-washy. They were like, not answering.
They were not open to receive. I'd be like,
Yeah,
gimme, gimme,
yeah.
gimme.
I'm sorry, making you cry. And it's just like, but this has a really beautiful ending also.
Yeah.
So we love Vinny, Vinny, Vinny's best friend is Nick Kynect. And his fiance was Kara. And I went up there the second year, and Kara said, why don't you? So by then, what I was doing was I was coaching Nick on how to do comedy. So like he had some dark senses of humor. So basically, he shot himself in Nick's car. And he's a veteran. So Nick's a veteran and he is from Montana. So they have a dark sense of humor. And so
Mm.
he was like, the asshole didn't even think, do you know that brain bits are not covered by insurance? So things like that, right?
Yeah.
Helping. And I was already running this. And Kara was like, you should start a foundation. And so she ran a fundraiser.
Mm-hmm.
And in one weekend, we needed $2,300 to file all the paperwork. The money that came in was $2,287.
Wow.
And she just said, here you go. And I said, wow, okay. So we started the foundation where we were like finding our place more and more.
Sure. Yeah.
In the beginning, it was about, spreading yayful messages through, comedy shows, right? And so educational workshops. So I put together training programs for peers at National Alliance on Mental Illness, American Foundation of Suicide Prevention, based on what I know. So I'm not a trained therapist, but I can speak to my personal experience and say what worked and encourage people to choose for themselves, whether it's right or wrong or whatever. But, I would always advise, go to a therapist or whatever. I'm just saying, like, this is what worked for me. And so it's like a kind of an out of the box kind of way of looking at things, so that is one thing that I advocate. But what I found very helpful was people like Nick being able to talk about the death of his friend in a positive way is a safe place for him to speak about his experience and have it be safe.
Yeah.
Kara, I taught her how to do it. So she got on stage and she started speaking. And Kara is a widow, and Kara's dad just lost his wife of 40 or so. They're coming with me to Widows Camp, where I'm like a presenter, and we're all so, and I know how to produce. So where we're falling, where we do a lot of is we do three things. We produce comedy events for organizations, and I will teach a comedy workshop to people of that organization, get them to go up on stage, tell their personal story, and then produce an event for them. And I do training workshops for mental health. So there's a lot of different things we do. And we have a 10-person board now. We're we've got some funding from AIDS Healthcare Foundation for advocacy for sexual health. Lots of I'm just rolling with it. I'm like, okay, what do I need to learn? What do I need to do?
Yeah.
I'll just figure. So it's landing in front of me, and I'm doing it. That's it.
Yes.
So that's it. That's what we're doing.
It's fantastic. I think it's such a fantastic. I hadn't heard of something like this before yet, right? Where it's helping people heal through comedy, right? I think comedy is healing, but I mean, specifically the way you're doing it as an event with training and then a separate training as well for mental health if you want to, but putting it in a way that's fun, the pain, right, into something that's fun and funny and connecting. I love that. I think that's so great.
Yeah. So Yahoo.
Last question. What can we do? How do we follow you and the Yay Foundation? Do you have anything coming up? How do we keep in contact?
Yeah, you can go to theyayfoundation.org or theartofbeingyay.com. And so, one way or the other, you can check out, the artofbeingyay.com is more about me. Theyayfoundation.org is more about the organization. But my big thing that I have coming up is the 5-city tour that we have. It's a Southwest Yay Fest tour through New Mexico and 4 cities in Colorado. Woo. So I hope to be there. And we're working on something in San Jose. So, we'll keep you abreast and all the information. Go to the website and you can see all the cool things we do. And come join us. It's fun. It's totally fun.
Yeah.
And we even have a gifting suite. We get
get swag. Is swag still a word? Swag. Yeah. So when is the Southwest one around? What time? When is that time frame?
End of September, early October. So the last weekend of September and the first weekend of October. Yeah.
Okay. Very cool. Thank you, Aidan, so much for being a fantastic guest and sharing your authentic self and being so open and vulnerable. I think that it'll really resonate with so many people.
Yay! Well, thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much for listening to Conversations with Alya Lei. I'd love to hear from you. Follow me on Instagram at Alya Lei, ALYALEI.